Hey, friends, welcome to my show. I'm really excited about the guest that I have on today, Mr. Kaelan Strouse. How are you, Kaelan?
I am most excellent. How are you today, Eugene?
I'm excellent. I have known of you for over a year and a half, and I think what you're doing is outstanding. You're reaching so much people on YouTube and in your other platforms. Author, coach, spiritual guru. That's what I'm throwing in there.
Perfect. I'll take it today.
We're all our own gurus, right?
Amen.
This show is about transforming our lives. It's kind of more than that, but through where I'm at in my journey right now, I've done so much inner work and I'm really starting to shed my skin. So I'm
Oh,
going to
there you
take my
go.
shirt off
Welcome to the club.
because we're going to authentically be our ecstatic selves today. And this is not always comfortable for me. I mean, I'm proud of who I am and I'm proud of my body, but the way I was raised and what I grew up in with religion, I did more of this,
Mhm.
and then I wasn't the jock. I was tied into that ego belief system. So I'm like, well, I'm not the jock and I'm not buff, so I must keep my shirt on, right? So I'm being free with you, and it feels good.
I love that. Welcome to the club. And, absolutely, I think there's such power in reclaiming our bodies and reclaiming being vulnerable physically and just what that gives us. Because, like you, I grew up in a very body negative environment. Keep yourself covered, keep yourself protected. Unless you look a certain way, you shouldn't, share that. But I just started to realize early on that when we shared naked space, or we shared shirtless space, like people become more authentic, they become more connected, more willing to express the real self. And
Mhm.
as an adult, I've gone to a few naked parties, and I tend to find that the people who go to those sort of things tend to be the most humble, grounded, genuine people who just are like not into the bullshit.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. So, speaking a little bit of the journey that we're talking about, when did you have that? I don't know if you want to call it awakening or knowing or intuition that it was time for you to have further transformation or change or whatever you'd like to resonate with. Was it kind of obviously the journey, but was there a pivotal moment that led you to that?
I'm going to be totally honest and say that for the bulk of my life that I can recall, so let's say, 13 onwards, since, I don't really remember childhood all that much, I've really been very focused on development and growth. And it hasn't looked in the same way. It hasn't been about the same things. But even as a young person, as a teenage man, really focused on how can I be better? How can I improve? How can I fulfill my potential? How can I be the best version of me? And originally that started off very career focused and very, how can I be the best actor? How can I, be, show up in the room in the best way possible? And then as I've gotten older, it's evolved into deeper things, right? Like, how do I be the best version of me for me? How do I
Mhm.
become the most open version of me, the most compassionate version of me, the sexiest version of me? Again, for me, not necessarily to get laid, but for me, how do I feel good in my own skin? And how do I offer something of value to others? So being growth focused has been an ongoing journey for me in so many different capacities. And I'm happy to answer that question more specifically if in reference to something like regarding your sexuality, regarding spirituality, regarding
Right. There's
want to
many
play
layers and
oracle.
levels. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But it's been ongoing.
Yeah, ongoing. Is it, you know what, it's something that you brought upon it. This is what I really wanted to talk to you about today is because I think, like you said, body positivity, belief systems around shaming the body or connecting a story around the body and sexualizing it. Now,
Hmm.
I, in my belief system, know that we're sexual beings and that creation, creativity, sexuality, spirituality can all morph into that oneness of who we are, right? I mean, it's like, it fuels it. Even the chakra system, the chakras, right? Especially the lower chakras, that's all within that area. The pleasure senses, the grounding, the releasing, healing.
Hmm.
From it's interesting though, the stories that we create, whether it's based on religion, our past, whatever we went through, abuse, trauma. But I see that, for at least what I see, the perception of what I see is that for myself, I see there's a lot of black and white still, right? It's like, okay, if you're naked all the time or you're promiscuous, that word, which I don't love, but these stories of if you're this, you're that, and if you're this, you're that. It's the same black and white. What do you tell people, like maybe somebody like me? So I'm very free. I mean, I'm not like maybe a nudist the way you are in the sense, but I've been to a nude beach and I run around the house naked and I've run around in the woods naked. I'm free with myself. I'm proud of my body. I love my body. It's taken a long time for me to say that. Uh, but what do you think it is about, like, okay, you're gay, so therefore, if you're naked, it goes right to sex? Like, you know what I'm saying? It doesn't have to be boom, boom, boom. And I think that's what I wanted to see, what you felt and what you think about that.
You brought up a few things that I'd love to comment on. First, your observation of things being black or white. Like, I think that that's one of the signs of our own personal development, is to begin to live in the gradation between and to realize that nothing is ever inherently black or white,
Mm-hmm.
or positive or negative, or pleasurable or painful, or masculine or feminine. Everything exists in a space in between. And if ever I find myself saying, well, that person's wrong or that thing is bad, it's a hallmark for me to say, hey, you've got some opening to do in this area, some healing to do in this area,
Mm-hmm.
and appreciate that when we mature more, we hold that space in the middle. We hold that everything is good or bad based on your perspective and where you connect with it. So, first off, just wanted to comment on that idea, and how we move forward is, dequalifying something as good or bad, bright or dark. Just saying, this is the experience I'm having, and I'm trying to have a more inclusive, more expansive experience of it.
I love that. Right.
Then regarding sexualization of our bodies and sexual energy, we look at our sexual energy as being something incredibly potent. And we can say that in a few different ways. One, the immense attraction we feel when we're engaged in our sexual energy, of course, but it is also that which we are able to create new life through. Right? Like our sexual energy, our sexual fluids are our version of what some might call God's gift, right? Like we describe the Almighty as being that which creates life. We experience that in our own right through our sexual energy. So it is an incredibly powerful force. And when something is incredibly powerful, it can be used for tremendous pain, or it can be used for tremendous growth or healing. And it depends on how that energy is directed. So a sexual encounter that's done unconsciously, that's done without concern or compassion for those who are involved, it can be a really traumatic experience and a really painful one that takes a long time to heal through. Or when done from a more conscious lens, done with intentionality, communication, purpose, it can be a more healing, benevolent force that creates tremendous transformation and growth. I know for myself, some of the most healing and powerful moments of reclaiming my power, reclaiming myself, reclaiming my self-worth, my feeling of placement in the world, that I have a right to be here, has happened through the people who have loved me and the people who have given me touch in an affirming way. So I recognize that it's always going to be a loaded environment when sexual energy is at play. And then regarding third thing, the sexualization of nudity, especially in queer spaces and gay spaces. Well, one, I think we have unique challenges occupying the body types that we're also attracted to.
Mm-hmm.
So, I know for me, being naked by myself is often a sexualized experience, right? Because there's that element of titillation with yourself. So that's always in the room in a way that opposite sex attracted people don't necessarily have to contend with. And we add in the fact too that most gay men have had some level of trauma or at least discomfort around their sexual orientation. And when we're on our healing journey, those things will come front and center, and they will sometimes express themselves in ways that we don't intend. And so it's very easy for any naked space, any body positive space, to morph into something sexual. And not that that's bad. The one thing that I often observe, though, and I went to a friend's naked birthday party a couple weeks ago, and they let us know that the first half of the event was going to be fully platonic, just people hanging out naked, having cheese squares. And then if you want to partake, the second half was kind of more of a sex party. And what
Uh,
I thought was really interesting is the demeanor of the people changed drastically between the two, to the point that I didn't recognize people. And my husband and I chose not to stay for the latter half because it didn't feel like a space we felt comfortable in.
mhm.
But part of that was because we spend all this time having really nice conversation and engaging with individuals and feeling really connected. And then as soon as it's like, oh, we're in sex mode, their personality changes and
Mm-hmm.
how they show up changes. And it felt like a new group of people. And that's something that I really strive to demonstrate through what I post online and what we talk about is I think we're at our healthiest when we live in a way that we show up as the same person in every space and that sex isn't shameful. I don't have to go into an alternate mindset to access it, or even just like dancing. I was on a dance floor this summer on a gay cruise and someone said, I think you're so incredibly brave that you show up on the floor sober without being having to be drunk to be here. And I think that's sad. Like, I think when we are in a more healed space that's more integrated, that's more accepting of ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
we realize that sex and sexuality is present with us always. And it's not
Right.
something that has to be regulated or relegated to a different part of our persona or a different space in the house, but that I can be friendly with you and at the same time be attracted to you. And that it's just a choice how I express that.
Oh boy, I love everything you said. It's interesting. I want to touch on some things of what you said. First, this was a little previous, but it ties into this. First, like you said, where we come from with our healing, with our sexuality, with how we feel about our bodies, how we want to show up in our temporary physical bodies, our temples, as we would like to call them possibly, is it's first of all, it's a choice, right? And it can be fueled on from that inner knowing awareness, more of the healing place, the community. I love what you said is that when you went to that party, it changed. And you know what? It's so interesting because that can happen with anything in life, whether it's professional, dating, family, friends. Whenever we start to also evolve, grow, transform, whatever you'd like to call it, others at times then either go with that or resist it, right? So there's something there. But like you said, people will be comfortable. You're opening up, you're communicating, you're feeling good. And then bam, it's like a light switch, right? That's the black and white. That's the, oh, now I'm in sex mode, or now I have to put on this persona of what it should be. It's almost like I'm going to shut back down this part
Yeah.
and just go from here to here or wherever, in the sense of more of the physical, non attached pleasure rather than connecting and having it through you, right? And that's what has been interesting for me because, I mean, we're all sexual beings, but I think, being empathic myself, highly sensitive, I've always been I have a lot of sexual energy and I enjoy myself very much that way. And my husband and I enjoy each other. I've experimented in the past different ways, although the more that I've known myself and begin to know my authentic self, and like you said, stand back with the awareness of how does this feel? How does this feel for me right now? Does this feel good? Uh, I have been less intrigued by, you think it'd be maybe the opposite, but I've been less intrigued by experimenting with others because I seem to, and this could be my own story, but I seem to step into it and go, like you said, oh, you guys have shut back down.
Yeah.
Like, and then I go, I'm good. Like, and so I'm trying to grow in that way myself, open my mind to more, shedding what no longer serves me from the religion, from the it's this or that, especially being openly gay, of what that should look like. And so whenever I've heard of sex parties, I run the other way because I think it's just a bunch of drugged out, again, judgment here, I admit it, but it's a bunch of drugged out people and I'm good, you know.
Yeah. We, me and my husband were having the conversation as we were leaving this party because it was amazing how their house transformed into a true sex dungeon. Like the lights turned red, there were rubber sheets, there were sex slings. It was like, it was in the basement, it was gritty. And I was like, if I went to a sex party that I wanted to partake in, or we were going to host one, I'm like, I want gauzy curtains. I want fresh flowers. I want
Right.
someone playing the lyre in a corner. I want bowls of fresh fruit, and like I want we're just like lounging and talking. And then if you want to move into something central, it's fine. But to make it feel like it's this sacred space, someplace beautiful and
Yes.
unhallowed, rather than the dungeon. And not that there's anything wrong
Right.
with
It's like it
it,
turns
but
into a porn, right? And I'm not gonna talk, I'm not shaming porn. I'm just saying like it's like boom, like like a set of a.
and it's what I think you're alluding to is that when we haven't done a lot of healing work, a lot of our sexual exploration comes from either a place of shame or longing or trying to figure something out. One of the reasons I don't really have a lot of sex apart from with my husband, like it's been quite a while now, is two things. One is I realized how much me seeking sex with other people was about validation. I didn't
Mm.
necessarily really want to have sex with them. I wanted to be desired. I wanted them to
Yes.
want me. I wanted to feel like I was good enough. And then the other aspect of why, even though I'm a really sex positive person, it doesn't necessarily mean I'm having a lot of sex with other people, is very much what you were alluding to, which is I think the sexiest part of a person is their heart,
Mm.
their soul, and their mind, and what they have to offer me. And when somebody has to shut all that off and move into primal fuck mode, and I don't get that, I lose my interest and I lose my attraction to them.
Yes.
And when we're young, or at least this is my experience, I won't qualify by young, but when I was younger, a hot body was enough, right? Like you're like, oh yeah, that guy's stacked, great, fuck
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then as I've gotten older, it's kind of like, yeah, that doesn't do it for me. Like I remember shortly before I met my husband, I got the invite to hook up with this super hot guy and smart. He was a anesthesiology resident at Northwestern University, and he came from a lot of money, had a huge penthouse in downtown Chicago, and ripped body, big dick, handsome face, was very polite. But I couldn't get an erection with him. And it was the only time I ever
Mm.
had that issue. And as I kind of sat with my experience in the moment, I was like, one, he's performing. Like, and it was interesting. Once we stopped playing, his voice changed, it like went up 2 octaves. One, he's performing. Two, I don't feel like he's being genuine with me or authentic.
Mm-hmm.
And three, it's very clear that he's here for what he wants and not what I want. That everything has been a manipulation of like, oh, I have champagne. Would you like it? It wasn't about, do I want champagne? It's, I want something from you and I'm going to play a certain game.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I had never had that experience before of like, wow, this physically stunning person, and I am so physically not turned on.
I have been there. I have been there. Similar to you, my 20s, I went from, like I said, I was very sheltered. Then I had a lot happen in my life in a short time. So I moved to LA in my mid 20s to pursue also an entertainment career. And that's when I really went on this kind of rampage. But again, it wasn't from that authentic, I know myself, I'm healed, I want to share. It was, I'm lonely, I'm lost, validate me. Well, I also was going through a lot of loss. My mother, who I was very close to, died when I was 23, and it was very tragic the way it happened. And plus the church and all of that it was smothered onto me. And so I really had no idea who I was. And so I was finding myself, which is part of the journey, right? The human experience. But I was in like this land of, well, this is what you do. You go to the club, you get drunk, you hook up, or, you know, you go to the bathhouse, which was never my thing. It terrified me because I was also like a germaphobe in the sense of I don't want to get anything. So there was always fear. So everything, it was driven by fear. There was so much fear. And then I kept bouncing around with all of that. And then my husband and I reconnected. That's a whole nother story when I turned 40, which was almost 10 years ago. And we have been on this delightful journey of self-expression, self-growth. We also have an 18-year age difference. He's 18 years older than me. And it's been incredible. And we talk openly about everything. And if there's attraction to somebody else, we talk about it. If
Yeah.
when we even when we reconnected, when I say that we knew each other way back when I was in my 20s and he was 43. But we talk about that and how do you feel about that? But when we first reconnected, I said, what are you into? Do you want to bring other people into this? And he said, not really. Do you? And I said, not really. No, because there was so much with us, like,
Yeah.
and there still is. And we've thought again at times, well, should we experiment more? But now it's more about, we want to do, tantric experiences, and we really want to dive deeper with each other. It's like, okay, we've done all the fun stuff, I'm going to be very TMI and I say that because he does have kids, and if you're watching, you're adults now, and we love you. That's all I'm going to say. But it's like, we have filmed each other, and we have played with toys, and we have done all the things that we can with ourselves in different stages.
Yeah.
And it just keeps progressing, and it's beautiful. And that's what I see with you and your husband when you share. It's like you are creating, experimenting, and evolving through it together. And that is like the best of everything as far as I'm concerned.
And I just want to highlight too something, and I keep hoping I'll meet somebody who contradicts this, but I haven't yet. But I want to, let's all admit the fact that most of the time, the sex you were describing, like going out, getting drunk, hooking up with a stranger, is usually not very good.
No.
Like I have yet to meet somebody who's like, yes, I love this. I do this all the time. I am spiritually fulfilled. It is amazing. I am living my best life. Like most of the people I talk to who are really heavily invested in that lifestyle will say, yeah, I have lots of sex, but I can count on one hand the number of times I've had really good sex where it's actually been really meaningful to me.
Mm-hmm.
And again, this isn't me like trying to slut shame or say there's anything wrong with that.
Right.
Just going back to that question of why am I having sex? What do I really want out of this? Am I looking for validation? Am I looking to be held? Right? Like that's a big reason people will have sex. It's just I want someone to hold me.
Right.
Am I looking to resolve an issue with my father, my mother, with my first boyfriend? And to say, ideally we work through that so we can just show up and be a full person with whoever we're engaging with, and that takes work. And I'll also say, kudos to you to being on that journey while living in Los Angeles, because, and no shade to people who live in LA. My husband was in Angelino for 10 years. I lived there briefly, but the culture we live in does set a tone.
Totally.
And culture in LA is very much about we're just engaging on the surface level. What you see on the surface level is all you're going to get, and I've made this as bright and shiny as possible, and we are not going deeper. And to try and seek meaningful relationship and meaningful connection there, I think is a very challenging endeavor.
I completely agree with you. It's interesting because we're talking about outside validation. I, for years, was searching for that due to my relationship with my father. And so it was, after my mother died, it was, please validate me, please validate. That's why I moved to LA. I wanted to be famous, not because I really think I truly wanted to be famous. I wanted somehow, within the talents and the creative gifts that I have, which my mother instilled in me, and then also natural ability, was to use your gift to inspire, to share. But then when she passed on, it was, I'm here, and now I need to be validated. Somebody tell me I'm okay. Tell me I'm worthy. Tell me I'm enough. And it just kind of went through everything. My relationships mirrored that. My sexual experiences mirrored that. Luckily for me, and again, no shame here, luckily for me, I was always able to have enough of the awareness and that inner voice down deep at times that would say, come on now, this isn't healthy right now. Or that little voice to say, watch out. When it came to experimentation on all levels with drugs, alcohol, sex, or whatever, I always just had this knowing, even through all of the confusion and the disconnection, as I say, to my true self, I suppose. But it's interesting, Kaelan, because I'm noticing the more, I don't know if you notice this, but the more I do the evolution for me, the growing for me, people will be drawn to me, right? Even people that I maybe just met or I know of in the community or wherever I'm at, they'll be drawn in, and there's purity. And then whenever they feel it and they sense it, and then I'm just open, and it's like, yes, and then it's shut down. like, and I think that's because of where they're at in their life. But I'm feeling it now in a different way. It's not so much sexual energy, I suppose, but it's like, yes, Eugene, yes, Eugene, yes, Eugene. And then I continue, when I say that, I mean, I run into someone, there's a connection on a friendship level, even there's a connection. And it's usually I'm talking about with gay men.
Yeah.
And I'm like, because I always desire to know more people, to have more friends, because I love the connection. I love knowing and conversing. And that's why I'm doing this. I
Yeah,
love
yeah.
it,
I I think there's something that comes up when we encounter somebody who is really open and somebody who's done a lot of healing work and really opened up that light inside of them, that it can be both attractive and it can also be terrifying because
Right.
it shows us where we could be, and it starts to crack us open a little bit, which
Right.
is what we want. But when you're not ready for that egg to start cracking, it's the scariest thing. Your whole world is going to fall apart. So I don't think that's an uncommon experience, that people like be pulled to you and then pull away after the experience of interacting at all.
Thank you for saying that. Thank you. And I, the journey for me right now is to focus back on myself and allow, and to, it's kind of that ebb and flow. It's kind of almost a neutrality place, being unattached, having the intention, being unattached, letting it, almost like the butterfly. That's why I mean, I've always loved butterflies, but it's always, for a long time, right? You have it behind you. For a long time, it was where you're at. For a long time, it was live, love now. And then it was inspire you. And now it's transform your life. And I think it's just where I'm at the moment. Like you said, where I am at the moment is what I'm experiencing and then what I want to share and how I want to connect. So it's like, for me, it's rebirth. And so I think for me, it's allowing others to be on their journey, holding the space at times for them, and saying the door is always open, and but continuing to move forward for myself and not having that. It's always self judgment, but not judging others for where they're at.
Amen. I was reading a book 2 weeks ago. I think I still have it over here. Fabulous book called The Flowering Wand, Rewilding the Sacred Masculine. And in it, the
Mm.
author does a really beautiful story about, a lot of people talk about the transformation of butterflies from caterpillars into a chrysalis into a butterfly. He said, but
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we're a little bit more like a dragonfly, which I didn't know anything about. But dragonflies have to go through like over 15 iterations of transformation before it finally
Wow.
becomes a dragonfly. And it takes a long period of time. I think it takes years. I'll have to fact check that. Um, but this idea that transformation isn't just, okay, we go in our cocoon and we're done.
Right.
It means we're going to keep changing, and you're going to change, and you're going to change, and you're going to change, and you're going to keep evolving. And so, as you said, kind of like how you've described what you've been focusing on has shifted and grown with you as you've shifted and grown. And that's what it
Yes.
should be. If I'm still focusing on the same things in 20 years, then I'm not doing this right.
Right. You're not doing well. Yeah, for you, for doing the work, and that's the excitement piece. And I think if others could see that for themselves in their own time, then it really is exciting. I know currently in our society, our world, although there's always been conflict, I believe, at least all that I've seen in the past. But that's part of the growth, the evolution. I think there's people holding on to what was, and other people kind of holding on and then going, and other people, we're all over the place right now, but it's really beautiful at the same time if we change our perspective. If we see that the crumbling of what was leads, like the crumbling of the pedestals, the crumbling of the thought forms, the belief systems based on ego, fueled by fear, it's all starting to open up. And I love what I keep going back to this, how it feels for me, the body I want for myself, the what I am experiencing, then I therefore share, and who is drawn to it. It's like the mirroring, right? Who is drawn to it in different elements of what I'm putting out there. And that's what's so beautiful what you do, because I know there are people that have probably come across you and going, why is he doing this? And why, all the little stories. Why is he naked all the time? And why is he working on his penis size? I'm sorry. I love you. That's all I want to tell you is I love you.
No, I agree wholeheartedly.
Because you're so like fearless. You're fearless, at least what I see. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on today, because it is so refreshing to know that there is someone like you and others on the planet in this moment in our life cycles, that you are showing up authentically yourself, bearing it all for you, and not shaming yourself in the process, and not allowing yourself to be played into the story of the collective at times.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that wholeheartedly. And whether it's fearless or just naive or just stupid, I don't know. But it's the only way I can be. And I've always been a big believer that if you control your narrative, if you put it out there and you are just open and authentic about who you are, because I've experienced the opposite, people will embrace you and love you. And when you try to project an image of who you think people want you to be,
Right, right.
that's when they tear you down. And so I
Yes.
feel like, well, if I talk about my journey with trying to grow my dick, it's not scandalous then when someone else is like, did you see that he did this thing on a forum when he was 19 years old, and oh my god, no, I talked about it all the time on YouTube. You're like, catch
Right.
up.
It's like here it is. There's almost like there's nothing to talk about. If people want to judge, they can judge because they're judging themselves anyway. I'm not gonna lie. There are moments with things that I've seen out there where I go, what is that person doing? But again, that is my own projection. That is a lot of times like, and if you don't mind, I want to talk about this because you are open. I noticed you have an OnlyFans account.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that I'm going to be honest with this. I don't feel I projected it onto you, but over the years since it became popular, I've kind of gone, I don't get it. Like I get it, but I don't get it. But then also I've never gone on. I've never, not that it matters one way or the other, but I've personally have never like subscribed or gone on to see what these are really like. So I have no idea.
Yeah.
All I know is I kind of go to the place again within my judgment where I'm like, isn't that just kind of like people paying to see you be naked or get off, or like what? How do you use it? What do you use it for?
Well, yes, it is that. Exactly. You're correct.
Right,
No.
but like, did you, if you don't mind me asking, is it just that you wanted to know what it felt like for you, or did you feel like it would break down more barriers, or?
For me, I have always had an interest with exhibitionism, and
Yeah.
for me, like sharing my body, like we were talking about earlier, has been a very healing thing for me. And I had a friend visiting who was this beautiful photographer, and he does self-photography in nature, and his photos were beautiful, and he came and stayed with us, and it inspired me. And one morning I woke up, it was a gorgeous sunrise, and we were living in rural Maryland. So I had this big backyard that was fully private,
Yeah.
and it was this foggy purpley and golden sunrise. So I ran out with my tripod and just took some photos, and I was like, oh wow, these are beautiful, I love them. What do I do with them? I don't want to post them on my regular Twitter because I want that to stay professional. So I created a naked Twitter and
Yeah.
posted these photos. And within like 5 days, I was at like almost 10,000 followers. And
Yeah, you're blowing up.
I hadn't told anyone else on my social media that I was doing this, my regular platforms. And so I kept doing it. And my husband came to me. He's like, look, sweetheart, I really do not care if you're posting naked photos. I love this about you. But please, can you make some money if you're going to be doing that? Like, can that be a source of income?
That's a good
Don't just give it away for free.
That's a good point, though.
Yeah. And so I was very resistant to the idea of an OnlyFans because, like you, I've had judgment about it. But I created one. And the first few months, I had a lot of internal struggle around it. And so, initially I was using it like, well, this is just going to be naked meditation. And this is just me going to be like,
Right.
literally standing in a field and like dancing with myself because I needed to be artistic and I needed to be serious and meaningful. And I just had to shut it down because it was becoming too uncomfortable. And one of my friends came to me and he said, Kaelan, one of the things that I so appreciate about you is that you show us that you can show up the same way in every space, that you don't have to be a different person in a sex club than you are with your partner, different person in the bedroom than you are in the boardroom. And when you had an OnlyFans, it allowed me to see that. And, at that time I was not monetized on YouTube. That's something that only happened very recently. And I'm like, you know what? I put all this effort into my content that I'm putting out there. If people want to support me through this, and you're talking the talk around sex positivity, body positivity, there shouldn't
Yeah.
be shame around these things, then just fucking do it. And so I've done it, now kind of all in for a little over a year, including the time I stopped. And overall, it's been like a lovely place to connect because I heard a voice once say to me in meditation, a lot of people who use their bodies to get attention, that's the end of their story, right?
Mm-hmm.
You look at them and that's all they have to offer and you're done. But instead, use your body to make people listen. So once you've gotten their attention, help them start to go deeper. And so I have lots of people who find me on YouTube and then support me on Patreon or OnlyFans or then get my book. Like it's so people can find me through any avenue. It goes the opposite way too, or maybe they see a naked photo and that ends up leading them to YouTube or one of my books. And so just like allowing people to see that, hey, we are all sexual beings. There's no reason to pretend that we're not. We're
It's
all
true.
people with bodies. Let's stop apologizing for it. And I'll be honest, there are times where shame still comes up for me around it. And there are times where like, oh, well, people take me less seriously because I have an OnlyFans. Or one of my goals for this next year is to start doing public speaking work. And I'm like, well, people want to hire me for that environment if they know that I have more sexualized content out there.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, this goes back to, I think, the whole point of this conversation, which is, why are we stigmatizing that which makes us human?
Right.
Why are we stigmatizing that which is our authentic self? If I presented a facade that said, no, 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 I never have sex, I never masturbate, I do not have a penis, that would be so inauthentic to how I really live my life and how most men live their life. And instead to just say, this is all of me, take it or leave it, warts and fat rolls and all. I don't have a perfect body. I work on it, but like I look at those guys and like look at everybody else on OnlyFans. They all have these amazing abs. You do not have abs. What the fuck are you doing? But you know what? I do the best I can with where I am and saying, hey, I remember once on OnlyFans I posted a body insecurity striptease where the stripper, and as I took off each piece, I told you about how I was insecure about that part of my body.
Nice.
And like, it's like, let's just be real.
But I thank you. And this is another thing I really appreciate that. And I knew you would because you're so authentic already on YouTube in public. So I didn't think that I couldn't ask it. But I needed that, or would like. I don't need it, but I have still things that make me uncomfortable. Not, it's interesting because, like I said, I'm kind of an expeditionist myself, but kind of in the shadow. I've always hidden a little bit just because of the judgment. Also, just not feeling safe. There's something around that I'm still working on where I have to feel safe, and I feel like, or there's that shame of if I do something and something goes wrong, it's I told you so, or look what you did, which is fear, shame, judgment. Uh, so I think I kind of go, oh, why is that person doing that? And it's like, no, Eugene, why is it? What is it about that is, what is it? Come on. I
Yeah.
know it always goes back to me.
Yeah.
And the awareness, again, we're talking about is the key. The consciousness, the higher level of understanding for ourselves. And the more we do the internal healing. And so I'm really wanting this new decade of my life as I enter my 50s to be the best decade I've had, to feel the best about me for me, like you said. Even this podcast, Kaelan, is for myself first. Yes, I also coach and counsel similar to you, and I do have clients, and I do want to connect with people like you and others and empower and help people transform if they choose to. But I'm doing this. I'm sharing vulnerably, like the first time ever publicly. Really, I still hid. Thank you. Thank you. I still hid. That's even the Inspire You. It was beautiful, but I was still hiding. I was hiding behind inspirational quotes. I was hiding behind what I thought I should do. Like, well, if I'm a spiritual person, then I can't ever admit that I enjoy toys, sexual toys, or I can't, or whatever it is. Like little simple things that we put down upon if we're in that place.
And I think and I hope that's how we're evolving as a culture spiritually, is to be so much more humanistic in our approach to what does it mean to be a spiritual being, because we go back where historically we had this really oppressive religion, hard black and white, hard right and wrong, thou shalt not, inscribed on stone. And there was a very big disconnect between the person and God, right? You couldn't even interpret scripture for yourself. You had to have somebody dictate it for you. You had somebody to tell you what to believe and not to believe, and you couldn't think for yourself. And as we've evolved as a culture, we've started moving to this place where we have our own agency. We start developing our own connection with spirituality. And as we move away from this rigid they versus us, something high and we are low, to realize that the divine has always been within us and that we are perfectly made as we are.
Yeah.
There's nothing about us that is imperfect, that we are whole and radiant and beautiful, and to embrace the totality of ourselves and see the sacredness in the totality of ourselves, even when it's scary, even when it's frightening, even when it's asking you to change and evolve in how you see yourself and see your world, because change is fucking hard, as we were talking about a long
Yeah.
time. But to embrace it and to say, I am forever evolving. I am forever becoming the best version of me. I am forever understanding that which makes me divine and that which makes me whole and that which makes me radiant and beautiful. And it's an ongoing journey, but that all of that exists in here. It's not up here. I don't need to reach for it. It's already within.
Right. All from within. That it's like I look at it as for me I'm a divine spark of the collective consciousness of source. I
Mm-hmm.
see like this gorgeous sun, like our sun that goes around, in our solar system, right? That keeps us fueling and evolving and moving forward. And I see myself as like a sun ray or maybe a spark from a fire, and that's my soul. And I'm pure divinity, and
Yeah.
I'm here to experience once again in the human form, and not only to evolve and grow for myself, but I also feel I've been breaking a lot of ancestral cycles from my lineage and clearing a lot up. And I again, me first, used to be about everybody else, the people pleaser, the empath. My life was ruled by narcissists for a long time, and I allowed it. I allowed myself to be shamed on all levels because I thought, well, I'm just here to help them. Yet I didn't help myself. I diminished myself.
And you can only offer others that which you have. If you have
Exactly.
cultivated richness, joy, peace,
Mm-hmm.
tranquility, love, compassion, then you can offer it. But if you are empty, it doesn't matter what you offer somebody, it's not going to be worth anything. I often say it's like offering somebody $10 when your pockets are empty. Like, what value are you really going to give them when you have nothing?
Right. That's a very good point. It's totally true.
Going back to earlier when you were talking about your 20 something yourself who wanted to be famous,
Yes.
I want to just affirm that that was no failing of yours, that that's where you sought solace, that it was a failing of our society. Because in
Yes.
a healthy society, and I went through the same thing for myself, thinking that being famous would solve my problems.
Yeah.
In a healthy society, we would have a community that came to you and said, we value you. We see you. We affirm your worth. We're so glad you're here and a part of us. And because we live in a society that is so isolated and so doesn't have those social structures in place that we need, we go to the tropes that society tells us, which are become a star on TikTok, become a movie star,
Right.
become so big then you'll never feel lonely again. And we know that's not true. Those people are very
So,
lonely and
oh
very
yeah,
isolated.
then most people within it figure how lonely they really are, especially if they become very famous, because then they're more of an object.
Yeah.
It's not about what can who is that person really authentically, but how that person makes me feel. I've always been, and thank you for saying that, by the way, and I resonate and I take that in, and I feel that I'm very open now to where my life is going. But I was on that hamster wheel really Kaelan, up until the pandemic. Not as much. I mean, I had obviously worked on myself and grown, but we were in New York up until August of 2020, and I was doing, a lot of cabaret, and I sang at Carnegie Hall, and was hosting for Broadway World TV, and all that was wonderful. They're wonderful people, but I was on a hamster wheel.
Yeah.
And then everything, as we know, the whole world had a reset. And that's when I took the opportunity to really listen in and say, okay, what are you chasing after? You're still chasing. Why? What are you going for out there? That's what's going on. So that's when I really have done major inner work for the last 3 years. And you were part of that. I mentioned off camera, but anyone right now, I mean, he's incredible on YouTube. Kaelan Strouse, Ecstatic Self, The Journey to the Ecstatic Self. He has a book out there, but he has hundreds of thousands of followers, and he's making an impact. And you helped me, Kaelan. Last March, as I mentioned to you, we were staying up in Nederland, Colorado. We were doing it's kind of a silent retreat up there, my husband and I mean, when I say silent, we were together, but I mean, it was really out in the mountains. We were kind of remote, and we were doing a lot of inner work, healing around everything that had occurred and our next steps, and really kind of going through a self-realization, but also what the hell is going on kind of too.
Yeah.
And so I was really diving deep, and I was doing a lot of channeling work with the teacher and coursework and reading. And then I was led to you on YouTube, and even the work with your chakras, your guided meditations. There was so much stuck in the solar plex of my worth still, and not only sexually down into solar sacral root, but just worth and value in general, of success, of masculinity, of proving the outside validation piece of love me, everybody, love me, I'm worth something, just see me, see me.
Yeah.
And then I saw myself into a way, and it broke free through especially through your meditation. I mean, it was, a cumulative experience from everything that I was doing, but I was almost, I was vibrating, and I just had tears just rolling down, and it was just surging out the energy, and it was like breaking free. And I literally felt it go down through the chakras and kind of release. But then I had kind of a circular thing that happened. It like shuddered through my whole body.
Beautiful, brother. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a common space for a lot of gay men, where they feel really blocked, is through here, because that formulates at a part of my life where we're developing our agency in the world, and we're developing our power. Mm-hmm. And when you're straight, it's like, oh, the world's my oyster. I'm a straight man. Yes. And when you're gay, it's like, I have to hide. I don't have agency here. If I express my true self, I will be shunned. I will be bullied. I will be tortured. And so it's a place that I think for a lot of us, it's held back.
Totally. Well, thank you again. I can't wait to continue to be a part of your journey from afar. Would love to work with you one day. We can talk about that later, but I just think what you're doing is amazing. And thank you for authentically letting us be a part and bringing us into all elements of who you are, physically, mentally, sexually, creatively, emotionally, just all forms of it. And also thank you to your husband for sharing you.
He is an amazing man. If you get a chance to watch any of the times I have conversations with him on YouTube, check it out, because he is brilliant beyond brilliant.
Yeah, and I feel that way about mine too. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's been such a joy, Eugene. Thank you so much.
Oh, I've loved every minute of it. Thank you, Kaelan.